It's Monday, December 10th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we learn more about housing resiliency by design and knowing what chemicals are in your homes or businesses that can protect our drinking water. Let's start with some news you can use. The Army Corps of Engineers continues a series of public meetings Wednesday evening, December 12th, at the Barnstable High School Performing Arts Center in Hyannis to discuss the future of the Bourne and Sagamore bridges. The Corps is conducting a multi-year major rehabilitation evaluation study of the two bridges to determine whether major rehab work or the replacement of one or both of the spans would be the best solution. The bridges were constructed more than 80 years ago and require an increasing amount of maintenance. Registration begins at 6 p.m. An open house will be held from 6 to 6:30 with informational posters and Corps staff on hand to answer questions about the study. A project overview will begin at 6:30 p.m. and will be followed by an opportunity for public comment. Join a panel of county and state experts to learn more about resources that businesses and homeowners can use to address hazardous chemical vulnerabilities, increase climate change preparedness, and protect public safety. We're here in studio talking water. Water is really the lifeblood of Cape Cod, and everything that we do and have around us is full of water. With me today, I have Shannon Jarbo, floodplain specialist for the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, Barnstable County, and Daniel Flockton, aquifer protection intern. Fantastic title. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us, Paula.
Thank you, Paula.
So, Shannon, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do at the county.
Sure. So we both work for the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. I'm a joint extension specialist with Cape Cod Cooperative Extension and Woods Hole Sea Grant. So as floodplain specialist, what I do is help all of the towns and residents, whoever has any issues or questions with any flood-related issues. So it could be flood insurance, floodplain building regulations, all kinds of elevation issues that people might have, or any flooding questions in general.
And an aquifer protection intern. Again, fancy title. I love it.
It's
Daniel,
very
what do you do as an intern over there at the county?
So I work with the Hazardous Waste and Materials Program. My supervisor, Calliope, and what I do, the first part of my internship, I have built a database of environmentally focused organizations, environment and water on the Cape. So both municipal, like your natural resource departments, and nonprofit, like your land trusts and that sort of thing. And the second half has been working towards building a workshop, which we're going to put on, involving chemical safety and climate change preparedness, and how chemicals affect all of us, and how we can all work together to reduce the risk of polluting the water, which all goes back into our aquifer, which we drink from.
So I have to tell you, this particular workshop that you've put together, the chemical safety and climate change preparedness, it's going to be at West Barnstable Community Building over on Meeting House Way. This is really cool. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the need for this workshop.
Well, as I said, chemicals are all around us. They affect all of us, even things as seemingly mundane as paint thinner and gasoline. If there's a flood or some kind of event and it gets into the water, it goes right back into our aquifer. So an aquifer is basically where groundwater stores underground, and it's where we get our drinking water from. And on Cape Cod, it's sole source aquifer, meaning it's our only source of drinking water. So if we contaminate it, that's a big problem.
Right.
It's also unconfined, meaning that unlike drilling into bedrock to get water, it's recharged all the time by rainwater. So that same flow of water makes it easy for pollutants to get into the water. So again, it's easily polluted and it's our only source of water. So we need to protect it, and chemicals are all around us.
Right. So who really is the target for this workshop? Is it businesses? Is it residents? Is it municipalities?
I'll have Daniel take that one.
Yeah.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Everyone's welcome to come. We have sort of geared our invitation lists towards municipalities, businesses, and nonprofits, because they're larger organizations that have the resources that can sort of then spread the word throughout the community. But as I said, chemicals are everywhere. we all use them in our daily lives, so anyone is welcome to come.
What we really want to do is make sure that people are aware of the fact that they have these chemicals, have them think about what could happen if we do have a flood or any sort of other event where those chemicals could get out of where they're stored right now. And we want to be able to help folks think about their alternatives or just different ways to store those chemicals and just what they actually have that could potentially become hazardous.
All right. And the speaker lineup is really, you got an A-list coming here. So tell us kind of who's going to be there and give us this information.
So the who's who, basically. I'm going to give a little bit of information on the aquifer to prime the event. Then we're going to have our lovely Shannon speak a little bit about her expertise with flooding and the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. After that, we're going to have Tiffany Skogstrom up from Boston from the Office of Technical Assistance come and speak about her office, which provides free confidential services to businesses. They'll do on-site assessments to see what kind of toxins you have on-site, how you can reduce those, alternatives you can use, how to store them properly, and how her office also focuses on incorporating toxins reduction and chemical safety into emergency preparedness planning. For example, is your business on a floodplain? Is there another business with toxic chemicals right nearby? They even have an interactive map that businesses can use and emergency planners can use. And then our final speaker, Rick Ferreira, he is from the Taunton Emergency Management Agency, and he's coming because they've worked with Tiffany in her office in the past actually implementing these programs in the Taunton area. And he's going to speak a little bit about how they've actually engaged with businesses in the community in practice.
Right. It's interesting too as we come back to what these chemicals could be. Looking at the list, is lawn and garden products. I mean, insecticides and pesticides. That's stuff we all store on the floors of our basements or in our sheds.
Right, yep.
I mean, that's something. It may not be in the house. It might be outside, out of sight, out of mind. Right.
Yep. Even things like flea and tick treatment can also be a hazardous material that might be in the home. It could be in the shed, it could be in the garage, it could be in the basement, and wherever you store it, you want to be conscious of what could happen to that.
Yeah, and I'm also businesses themselves. We think, oh, it's automotive, right? That's the only one, or maybe it's a landscaping company with their stuff. But almost every business probably has some of these chemicals.
Oh, absolutely. Certain things, dry cleaners, jewelers, sawmills. You pretty much name a business, they probably have some kind of chemical that can pollute the water supply.
Right.
And even you look, at the extension, you look at our cleaning products under the sink. Anything that you would have in a household, you probably have in your office too, in terms of household cleaners and things like that. So
right.
Everyone has these.
Right. So climate safety, but the title is climate change preparedness. Mm-hmm. So how does that all tie together?
Sure. So thinking specifically about flooding. So we're looking at various types of flood events. So of course we have coastal floods here. We saw last winter several nor'easters. We can get just the right setup. And if we have a hurricane, then we could have some really significant flooding. We have sea level rise. We're starting to see more high tide. Just the past couple weeks, we had some really high tides. Yeah. And then another thing that we're starting to see more of as well is these heavy precipitation events. These are really just picking up over the past few years, and people who are far away from the coast are starting to experience flooding. So people that didn't even think that they had to think about flood issues because they were far away from the source of flooding being the ocean, now have to start thinking about it. So anyone with a basement, if you're at the bottom of a hill, even if you're at the top of the hill, we're starting to see flooding in all kinds of crazy places because of this heavier precipitation. And with climate change, we're expecting that we're going to see more of these heavy single events where so much rain comes down, it just can't infiltrate into the ground fast enough, and it starts to cause damage to homes.
That's just crazy.
It is. It is.
Let's talk a little bit about the municipality aspect of this. Mm-hmm. So, municipalities want their residents, our mission is to keep our residents safe, to make sure that they have a good quality of life. How is something like this going to help them if they go to a workshop like this?
So to start, if we get municipalities to attend, this is going to help them open their eyes to what the potential issues are. So I work with towns a lot and town staff a lot with explaining flood issues, but this is another aspect. This is a great way that different parts of Cape Cod Cooperative Extension expertise are coming together and working together to share that information with folks. And this is the start of a conversation. So we're also going to be able to work that into the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program that a lot of the towns have gotten grants, planning grants for the MVP process, and that helps them look at resiliency and climate issues and start to address those. So this will be a great way to incorporate some new ideas and some new thoughts and ways to address hazards into those plans.
All right. And as an intern, Danielle, I'm curious of how you got interested in protecting our aquifer.
Well, I actually come from Carver, not that far from here. We have a similar sole source aquifer, and we have agriculture with cranberry bogs all over our town, Cranberry, USA.
Okay.
We face the same kinds of problems with pesticides and those kind of things. So I've always had some kind of appreciation for protecting the natural environment, particularly water, and this kind of translated very easily.
Right. And the work that you're doing here, how is that going to help you as you go forward in your career?
Well, as far as learning how government works, how to coordinate a media campaign, how to sort of wrangle everyone together to actually get a big project like this done, those are skills that will be applicable in any career path I choose.
That's fantastic. You're lucky.
I
Calliope's
know,
lucky.
yep.
I mean, you know.
It's a great addition.
A great addition. What else do you want people to know about this particular event or what your departments are doing?
Anything you can think of about this particular event?
Well, I'll reiterate when it is, just to tell you folks. It's on Wednesday, December 12th from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. in West Barnstable at the West Barnstable Community Building. We have a great lineup of speakers sort of telling a story of what can happen with chemicals and how to have chemical safety in our everyday lives. That's why
fantastic.
someone should come.
I'd like to add that it's a great opportunity to learn what the county is doing for the residents. We do a lot of great things at the county, particularly with hazardous waste and with flooding as well. So it's a great introduction to what we do for folks at the county.
Great. So December 12th, the West Barnstable Community Building. It's going to be at 9:30 a.m. to 11:30. And chemical safety and climate change preparedness. It's really important.
It is.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you,
Thanks
Paula.
for having us, Paula.
Your insight on housing trends, design, and preference is needed to help the town of Barnstable plan for the future. Barnstable is working in collaboration with the Cape Cod Commission and the award-winning design team of Union Studio to develop model residential designs to meet the housing needs of our region in a way that is sensitive to our community character and natural resources. Join the Planning and Development Department tonight for an open community conversation about what it will take to meet market demands for smaller, more affordable housing units in those areas of our communities supported by infrastructure and neighborhood services. Community resiliency by design. What type of house or home do you prefer? With me today, Arden Cadron from the town of Barnstable, Heather Harper, Chief of Staff for the Cape Cod Commission. You have a wonderful event coming up on Monday, the 10th, that's going to talk about different types of housing for the East End. So first off, Arden, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Heather, welcome as well.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about community resiliency by design. I actually really like that title. Where did that come from?
I think that's probably me. It came from a program that we've implemented across 3 other towns, and we're really, really delighted to have the town of Barnstable and the East Hyannis area come on board with that. And it resulted from a grant from the Department of Energy and the Environment, where we were really looking, as we're developing the long-range plan for the region and the regional policy plan, we really started taking a look at the development patterns, the types of regulations that we have in place, and how that's affecting our community, both from a community development, a community form standpoint, as well as the environmental impacts of continuing to grow with single-family homes. We know that housing across the Cape, whether it's affordable housing, housing that's affordable, or housing that meets life stage needs, is an important priority for the region. So we developed this program that allows communities to really envision and promote more compact development in a housing form that is something that we may not see in many of our communities. And it's been extremely well received in Eastham, Orleans, and Falmouth, and has resulted in some ongoing relationships and projects. So we're really happy to be on board with Barnstable.
Yeah, I just want to add, resiliency can also be defined in a different way, and it's economic development resiliency. So we're trying to create multiple types of housing that will suit the needs of multiple different income groups and people at different stages of their lives, and that makes a community economically viable and resilient, economically development resilient.
That's fantastic. The actual single-family detached, the sprawl, I guess you could say, of Cape Cod. When we talk about the city center, so Hyannis obviously is kind of the mecca of where things are happening for medical and for some other types of economic development. The East End really hasn't had a lot of love over the years. So why the East End?
Well, the East End is getting love recently. So there's been a streetscape project that a lot of the community members know and have been participating in. And because we were working on that already, we thought it would be a good study area to target this initiative. But we're hoping the product that comes out of it will be easily translated throughout all of Hyannis. So it's
and possibly the other villages.
Possibly the other villages. Might be a little different in the other villages, but something
Right.
similar.
So the workshop is going to be held on Monday, and there's a survey that people can take before that. So let's talk a little bit about surveying people. Click next, click submit, 3 choices. This is different.
Yeah, this is a really different survey, and we were lucky enough to develop it at the Commission for the 3 sort of initial towns. So we have over 600 individuals across Cape Cod who have already participated in this survey. So we're really interested in the way Hyannis responds to the same type of visual preference. We can develop a context that's appropriate in places across Cape Cod so that you can utilize this information, whether it's in Marston's Mills or West Barnstable. We can focus on East Hyannis, but the feedback that the community gets from the visual preference survey is really targeting on getting the respondents' feedback on both the scale and the design. So it's not just how big a building is, but how big a building is and how you feel about it depends on some of the architectural features, and it may be that it's the front door that appeals to you, the scale of the roof line, and we're finding that if those things are really right, the density and the form become less and less relevant. And so it's been a really useful tool to inform a very talented design team that we're working with.
Okay. So walk through the viewers of this survey. You say visual, and I've already looked at it. I thought it was really fascinating. I'm a web developer as a past profession. So the actual visual of this, so people can actually see these things.
Right.
Absolutely. There's pictures right there, as will be presented at the workshop as well. So there's comparison photos of existing structures right there in the survey. So if you're a real estate geek, you're going to love it.
And I find it fascinating that there may perhaps be different people visualizing. So, for example, Hyannis opposed to something like a Wellfleet in Eastham. So, that data that you collect, that should be really, really valuable coming down the road to Falmouth, again, different.
Right, so what we found as a result of the process is the tolerances for scale and design really do reflect the context. So when you're looking at Eastham, a rural highway corridor, Orleans, which is a really conventional, traditional downtown, and Falmouth's looking at a more transitional commercial area. And you've got this really wonderful traditional working waterfront neighborhood in East Hyannis. So we'll get a sense of what the tolerances are, and we've learned that Eastham can support 10 units an acre. Orleans is comfortable with 14. Falmouth is comfortable with 20. Based on this process, right, this isn't a regulatory process,
Sure.
but based on envisioning, there's a lot more tolerance if the form and the style is consistent with what the community views itself as and is reflective of their own community, that what's behind the 4 walls becomes less important.
Excellent. And planning and development as a department uses these workshops throughout the year for different initiatives. What do you hope to get from Monday night's workshop?
Well, we were fortunate to receive an additional grant that will follow up this project. So we're going to take the input that we receive from Hyannis on the forms that they prefer, and we're going to use it to revise the zoning so that we'll be able to actually change the zoning so these design design models will be able to be implemented. So that will be the next phase of this project.
Wow. So who should attend this? Really?
Really, I'd say anyone should attend it, whether you're a stakeholder that just values the village of Hyannis and what happens to it. We know that it's the commercial center of our region. What happens in Hyannis is important to the region overall. So really anyone who's interested in that village, if you're a property owner, if you're a neighbor to the area. So I'd say it's pretty wide open about who ought to be there.
Do you think that there's an opportunity, so employers out there right now are looking for housing for their workforce here in Hyannis. This is a really good opportunity for their voices to be heard.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Excellent. When we kind of think about the scale and arrangements for the study area, walk me through, Arden, where this actually encompasses. We can say the east end of Hyannis, but that's a fairly large area. Is it, the Captain's Row? Is it the hospital area?
Yeah, it's from about Center Street
Okay.
to the Barnstable Town Line, Yarmouth Town Line, east to the town line, and then south to South Street. So we're not going all the way down to the waterfront to South Street, up to about Route 28.
Okay, so that's a significant area.
It's a significant area, a little larger than what Union Studios has looked at prior, but our project's slightly different. We have a lot of the forms already existing in this area, in this study area. They're just not being used in a way that we think would be most beneficial to the community to help solve the housing crisis.
Okay. Explain who Union Station is and what these forms are.
So it's Union Studio. They're a very talented design firm. They're located out of Providence, Rhode Island, but have really been rooted on Cape Cod and done some design work in the village of Hyannis and Sandwich and some other communities across the Cape. And they, we selected them through a competitive process, and just really fortunately so, have a really great sensibility about how to engage the community in making decisions about form preferences. So what we have now from the 3 communities that we've worked with are a series of building forms from a small cottage up to a multiplex, which may be multiple up 20 to 40 units of housing in a particular building form. We have those in a 3D format, so we can start to layer those into the 3D base model that we have for Cape Cod. So when Hyannis is done with its visioning, there's a good possibility we could take the forms that make sense, lay them into a 3D framework so people can really get a sense of what the forms they're thinking of, really visualize them in a specific place. Will also allow us, and what we're just embarking on now, is to draft a form-based code framework, which is sort of the precursor to what Arden and the Department of Community Development hope to do with a form-based code or a regulatory change. So that gives the community a sense of looking at the regulatory approach from a physical, form-based approach rather than use-based. So rather than thinking about what should a retail environment look like or what should a medical environment look like, what are the forms that really make sense for this neighborhood, and how do we develop a regulating plan that can support the type of development that we'd like to see?
I'll just give you a little example of that. Right now, one of the zoning districts in this area is medical. They envisioned moving medical offices here by changing the zoning, but this is a sort of a course correction where that building might be able to support medical on the first floor and a couple of housing units upstairs. Again, what goes on behind those 4 walls isn't as important.
Right. This is, when we think about all of the challenges that Cape Cod faces with housing between accessory dwelling units, and there's the new initiative of the 365 is to try to get some of those second homes into the stock here. When we look at something like this is the future. This is really what we need to do, is to, I hate to use the phrase because it's overused now, but think outside that box, right? Think outside those 4 walls of a traditional single family detached house.
Absolutely. We're not going to solve this housing crisis with one initiative, with one strategy. It's going to be a layer of strategies, and this is one that we hope will be very successful.
Right. So sorry.
Well, that's where really we come in, is it's, the long range approach and really taking the long view. Right. Local governments always have to react, frequently to what's before them. And so the ability to have the long view and introduce these planning concepts that are not attached to a specific development proposal gives the community a real opportunity to vision. And we're really, really pleased to be partnering with Hyannis on this.
Right, the support of the commission to be able to do that and to provide some of those tools is something that municipalities rely on.
Absolutely, we couldn't have done this by ourselves, both from a staff capacity and cost. So because the commission, the regional agency, was able to get that grant, we as a town were able to participate.
That's great. When is it?
December 10th, Monday night, 5:30, Town Hall in the hearing room.
Yeah, there's going to be snacks.
There's going to be snacks. Don't worry
So
that
we'll be there.
it's an iffy hour, so there'll be snacks to hold
Right.
us over.
And then the planning board is right behind that.
The planning board's right behind that because this is a planning board sponsored event, so it's at the night of the planning board meeting. So there's a hard stop at 7, so if you can get there on time, that would be appreciated.
Excellent. And what's the, I guess the one thing that you really want residents to know about this workshop, or the survey for that?
That it's an opportunity for them to really engage in the long-term visioning for their own community. And while the results may not reflect a specific development plan, it will influence the way that the community responds to the regulating scheme for that location. So I think it's a really, planning doesn't always attract the audience that you'd
doesn't.
like, but this is really an opportunity where you don't need to be an expert, you don't need to be an architect. It's really about your comfort level, what makes sense to you from a community design standpoint, and that's why we use the terms community resiliency by design. It's about what makes sense for this community, and I was really glad to hear Arden make the comments about economic resiliency, and this is really part of that long-term strategy about how do we sustain our region over the long term.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I just hope that people turn out. It is going to be a different type of event than we're used to. We're not going to be reading zoning changes and trying to follow and interpret.
Right.
So there'll be a lot of interactive involvement. You get to choose, literally raise your hand, choose between two things. So it'll be really interactive, and I hope people are able to turn out.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes, my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Here's a look at the community calendar. Are you looking to create a unique gift from the sea? Sign up for the Cape Cod Holiday Oyster Shell Decorating Workshop on Tuesday, December 11th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Barnstable Senior Center. Learn from start to finish how to get one of our beloved Cape Cod treasures ready for painting. Artist Ann DeRosiers will show you what she does to clean, prime, and paint these beautiful ornaments. Just in time for the holidays. Make them as gifts or decorate them for your own holiday home. And we'll provide instructions and all the supplies. Enjoy a hot chocolate and have fun. Everyone will bring home ornaments. Please bring a smock or old shirt to class. Limited spaces in the class, so register today by calling 508-862-4750. Comments, suggestions, accolades? Connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Email us or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.